We're here because free speech is under attack. We're here because people are being convinced that socialism works. We're here because people are being judged guilty until proven innocent. We are fighting back with facts. This is not a safe zone, so buckle up, Buttercup. This is the raw, naked truth.
Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin. This morning, Democrats pushed the Build Back Better bill through the House. The CBO numbers came out yesterday, and the news is not good. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the bill will add $380 billion to the deficit. Despite that number, Pelosi repeated the Democratic lie this morning that this bill is paid for. We should point out that the deficit number does not take into account more inflation and assumes that some of these programs will sunset. This is a funding gimmick that the Democrats put in. Now, we know from experience that these government programs rarely sunset, so the cost will actually balloon over time and add even more to the deficit than the CBO assumes. So the idea that this is paid for has officially been determined to be a lie. On top of that, CBO estimates have historically underestimated costs and overestimated revenue because they can only gauge a bill at the time they look at it. Rising costs and other economic changes don't get factored in. Now, this is not because of any bias or incompetence on the part of the CBO, as some want you to believe. It's simply because the CBO doesn't have a crystal ball to predict the future. They can only estimate costs based on what's going on right now. So let's look at what else this bill is going to do other than balloon our deficit. The bill raises taxes on business. Taxes are a cost. Government doesn't seem to understand this. They think businesses magically make money. As we talked about in a previous podcast, when costs go up, businesses either need to pass the cost on to the consumer or find another way to cut costs. The two most common ways of cutting costs are moving production overseas, where it's a lot cheaper, or cutting jobs. Neither of these is a great outcome for the American public. Both of these will eliminate American jobs. So the result of these higher taxes are either fewer jobs or higher prices. Inflation is already at 30-year highs. This pushes it even higher. In fact, the bill is the largest tax increase in history. Whether through direct taxation or by causing inflation, this bill will negatively affect everybody's wallet. Additionally, the more production moves overseas, the more supply chain problems intensify. So not only are we going to be paying more at the pump, at the store for whatever we need, the existing supply chain problems will be made worse by this bill. The Democrats have talked about the jobs this bill will create, and the investment in green energy will create jobs. It'll create jobs making solar panels and batteries for electric cars. Here's the problem. Those items are made in China. This bill creates Chinese jobs. There is a carve-out for electric car manufacturers to create union jobs, but these jobs are assembly jobs, and they already exist. Electric cars aren't going to create a demand for more cars. They're just going to switch the demand from non-electric cars to electric cars. So the people who will assemble the electric cars are the same people who are assembling non-electric cars now. Unions will be able to say they fought for jobs and they kept their jobs, but very few, if any, new jobs will be created. And in fact, because some of these parts are manufactured in China, i.e. the batteries, we'll actually be sending more jobs to China than we'll be creating here. Then there's salt. Salt was fought over and ultimately made it back into the bill. Now, for those of you not familiar with the term, SALT stands for state and local taxes. Democrats have been saying they want the rich to pay their fair share. Well, SALT allows people in tax-heavy states to deduct their local taxes from their federal taxes. Here's the rub. This applies primarily to high-tax states. These states are all democratically run. Furthermore, it only applies to the top 13% of taxpayers. So according to the IRS, the other 87% use the standard deduction and don't itemize. Well, those 87% got a tax cut under the Trump administration, which removed the SALT deduction. Democratic states want the SALT deduction because it allows them to tax more without putting more of a burden on their richest residents. So where does that burden go? Well, essentially the rest of the country subsidizes those high tax states when their residents take the SALT deduction. And again, this was part, reducing and removing a lot of the SALT deduction was part of the Trump tax cut. Democrats, all these years later, are still trying to position the Trump tax cuts as tax cuts for the rich. The raw, naked truth, those 87% of people that don't itemize their deductions got lower taxes. That's 87% of the country had their taxes lowered by the Trump tax cuts, and Build Back Better wants to reverse a lot of that. So what happens now? Well, the bill now goes to the Senate. In its current state, the bill can't pass the Senate. Aside from any objections that Manchin and Sinema may have, the progressives put immigration policies into the bill. Now, we're not going to comment on the immigration policies because the reason it can't pass the Senate isn't because these policies are good or bad. It's simply that they're there. Those immigration policies are not fiscal. Why does that matter? Well, the Democrats are trying to push this through the Senate using reconciliation. And just in case anyone doesn't know what that means, reconciliation bills can pass the Senate with a simple majority instead of having 60 votes. The drawback of that is that only fiscal policy is eligible for reconciliation. By the Senate rules, the immigration policy cannot go through reconciliation. It will have to be removed before the Senate can vote on it. If they leave the immigration rules in, then you cannot put this through reconciliation, and the only way it can pass the Senate is with 60 votes. That's never going to happen. It barely has 50 now. So the bill will have to be rewritten by the Senate before they vote on it. Given the CBO numbers, it is likely that the bill will have numerous items taken out in order to lower the cost. One of the items that has been already talked about being removed is the family leave provision. This is a darling provision of the socialist left. So removing that does actually remove a lot of the cost, but it's also going to anger the left. If they can get the cost low enough and fix the bill so that it doesn't raise inflation, which is no mean feat, but that was a precondition that Senator Manchin put on, he will not support the bill if it raises inflation, which it does right now. So If they can make those fixes, then the Senate will vote on it. If it passes the Senate, which is no guarantee, it will have to go back to the House. Since most of what will have to be taken out to lower the costs is the darling progressive policies, they may fight to put those provisions back in, or they may decide to vote no on this bill, kill the bill, and instead push their own agenda, starting that all over again. If the House passes it as the Senate gives it to them, it'll go to the White House and Biden will sign it. If the House tries to rewrite it, it will have to go back to the Senate and the whole process starts all over again. So what happens if the bill passes as it is right now? Now, honestly, I don't actually see any way that it passes the Senate as it is right now. Again, because of the immigration policies, they can't use reconciliation in the bill's current state, so it does have to be rewritten. But on the off chance that everything that's in the bill right now manages to stay and gets pushed past the Senate and goes to the White House to be signed, right now, Build Back Better is an expansion of welfare. It will encourage people not to work and reverse the gains made under the Clinton administration when welfare was reformed. It will cause more inflation and ship more jobs overseas. Every time the government has put in place one of these massive spends, the results have been the same. Higher costs, fewer jobs, more burden on the middle class. This will be more of the same. That's the raw, naked truth. You can catch each episode of The Raw Naked Truth at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. We'll see you next time.